All right, I think it is a good time here to go ahead and start. Thank you all for being here. We're excited you joined us for today's Loma Talk. My name is Chelsea Paggio. I'm the Assistant Director of Alumni Relations at Point Loma. And the Alumni Office has been doing some Loma Talks over the summer, and it's just been a really awesome time to hear from our alums. We have amazing alums in different areas of expertise, and so they're bringing us their stories and their expertise here during the summer as we're kind of all in this virtual world together. We can gather no matter where we are geographically. So we're very thankful for that and excited to have Matt Arnold with us here today. He's going to share his story with you in a little bit. But he is a 2012 graduate from Point Loma. He went to culinary school in Paris, has been around the San Diego culinary world, and now has his own Crème Brûlée company, the Brûlée Bar. So he'll tell you a little bit about that and his journey. So I'm going to pass it off to him in just a minute. What we're going to do is hear his story. He's going to share a little bit, and then we're going to jump into a video. He has pre-recorded a really awesome creme brulee tutorial for us. As we're talking and as things come up, we would just invite you to ask any questions you want in the chat box. And we'll have a time at the end where Matt will provide a Q&A for us, and he'll answer anything. You know, it can be about practical steps on creme brulee. It can be about his journey, anything you want. Yeah, we're looking forward to that. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Matt, who is with us today. So here we go. Welcome, Matt.
Hey guys, thank you so much for joining us. Really excited about this opportunity. Thank you, Chelsea, for making this happen. A little bit about myself. I studied food service management through Family and Consumer Sciences at Point Loma Nazarene University. Graduated in 2012. And then the same year, I went over to Le Cordon Bleu in Paris, and I studied the Grand Diplôme, which is essentially the intensive studies of both cuisine and pastries. And I lived in Paris for that year. So leading up all the way until roughly about June 2013. So it was honestly one of the greatest experiences I've ever had living in another country for even just a short period of time. If you've never done it before, I strongly encourage you, once this whole thing blows over, to take advantage of an opportunity like that. You just become a much more well-rounded individual. And as soon as I graduated from Le Cordon Bleu, came back to the States, I had already fallen in love with San Diego, and I immediately started working in kitchens. So my first gig was at Searsucker in Del Mar. This was back when Brian Malarkey, who is a celebrity chef, he was on Top Chef multiple seasons, I believe. But that was back when he owned Searsucker and a whole bunch of other restaurants like Herringbone and Gabardine. So at the time, he was a pretty big chef in San Diego. After that, I decided to do pastries with a very prestigious restaurant called 910 in La Jolla. It's a restaurant attached to the Grand Colonial. And so I got some experience doing not only desserts for the restaurant, but also providing amenities and all sorts of breads and goods for the entire hotel, which was a really cool experience. And while I was there, I had the opportunity to learn from people like Rachel King. She was my pastry chef. She is honestly, in my opinion, one of the greatest pastry chefs in San Diego. And I also learned a lot from a guy named Jason Knibb, also an incredible chef. He has earned awards after awards in San Diego. He's a very well-known chef, Jason Knibb. Incredible guy, an incredibly inspirational chef. And I was very fortunate to learn from those two chefs. After that, I decided to take a break with my cooking experience, and I ended up doing a couple of musicals in San Diego, which is another passion of mine. If you've known me at Point Loma, I was actually in the all-male a cappella group Pointless. I was also in choir. So I did chapel band as well. So I was very involved musically at Point Loma. So yeah, I did music theater for a little bit, and then going back into the industry, I decided I wanted to change things up a bit. I had some culinary experience. At this point in time, I knew I wanted to open up my own restaurant someday, and I thought it would be a good idea to get experience doing other things in the industry. So I decided to move front of the house and be more interactive with customers. And my first gig doing that was at Polite Provisions. While I was there, I also got the opportunity to be a bartender at the Soda and Swine in Liberty Station. So Polite Provisions and Soda and Swine are part of a big restaurant group, the titan of the groups, I would say, called Consortium Holdings. If you're not familiar with Consortium Holdings, I'm sure you've heard of multiple restaurants under that name. So Underbelly Ramen, Ironside Fish and Oyster, Raised by Wolves. All of these restaurants, Neighborhood. Let's see, this was back when they owned Fairweather. But a lot of these restaurants, all of these restaurants are owned by Consortium Holdings. That's their big restaurant name. And so I was very fortunate to learn from Consortium. They have a very specific way of, leading the hospitality industry in San Diego. And I learned so much, and I'm very, very thankful for my time with them. Then I got the opportunity to work at a place called Panama 66 in Balboa Park, which is part of Kitchen Co. They own 3 restaurants, Tiger, which is in North Park on El Cajon Boulevard, as well as Blind Lady Ale House, a pizzeria, gastropub, and then they also own Automatic Brewing Co. So Kitchen Co. is a pretty big, well-known restaurant group as well. But I got the opportunity to start off bartending over at Panama 66, and that was an incredible opportunity. While I was there, I also had the opportunity to move on up the ranks, and I ended up being a front of the house manager at Tiger. And it was during that time, kind of like in October last year. Yeah, October of last year. They had to make some business decisions, and unfortunately, they had to let me go. And so I ended up looking for jobs for a while, and it kind of was a struggle, especially towards February. Things just didn't seem to fall into place. We had vacations planned and all sorts of things, my wife and I think that probably didn't help with trying to find a job. But we decided, after a while, that unemployment wasn't going to be enough. I mean, very fortunate to have the unemployment for an extended period of time, but we just knew that, if we wanted to accomplish certain goals at the end of our year, that certain things had to happen. And with me not being able to get the jobs that I wanted, I kept looking and things just weren't falling into place. I felt like God was telling me, it's time for you to stop helping other people accomplish, their goals and dreams. It's time to follow your own. And I remember it was Valentine's Day. I made like a multi-course meal for my wife. And I remember at the very end, I decided to make a dessert. Now, creme brulee has always been one of my personal favorite desserts. But I decided, I wanted to change it up. I wanted to make a new and exciting dessert that, was familiar to both of us, but something different, something new and exciting. And so what I ended up making was my first of the new creme brulees, which is lemongrass Thai chili. So I made a lemongrass Thai chili, and we were sitting at the table eating this dessert. And I just remember my wife looking at me like, have you been holding out on me? Like, this this is amazing. And I didn't even know you could do something like this. And I remember laughing and being like, I didn't know I could do something like this either. And we talked and we're like, maybe there's something I can do with this idea. Providing a dessert that was familiar to a lot of people and yet provide a new experience that they have never had before with something so familiar. And I knew that creme brulee, oddly enough, it's seen as such a luxurious dessert, but it's not that expensive to make in bulk. And I was like, I could maybe do something with this. And I remember test batching and letting some of our our neighbors in our apartment complex, try a couple of my batches and getting feedback and everything. And after a while, I was just like, you know what? This is something that I can do. This is something that I can expand upon. And we birthed the Brûlée Bar, and it's been a fun, exciting, wild journey thus far. Broke even the first week, which is something that freaked me out at first, but kind of made me realize that, the concept that I had was something that really is viable, something that I can actually do and that I can make some money off of, especially during this time. So yeah, that's a little bit about the Brûlée Bar and me.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Are we ready to move to our recording here of our how we can make one of these creme brulees ourselves?
Sure, let's do this.
All right. Sounds good. And again, as you all are watching, make sure to put questions in the chat box if you have any questions that come up.
Hey there, my name is Matt Arnold, and I'm a former student of PLNU, and I own the Brûlée Bar. And today I'm going to teach you how to make a very classic recipe, the vanilla bean creme brulee. Okay. So first things first, you want to set your oven to 300 degrees. If you do it any higher, I've noticed a change in consistency of the creme brulee. So for me, it's just flat out 300 degrees Fahrenheit. And then next, you're going to get your mise en place. Mise en place is a culinary term in French, and loosely translated in English, it means everything in its place. So the idea is if you have everything, in your place, in its place, then everything is organized and it's a lot easier to execute whatever you're trying to do, okay? So I've already taken the liberty of doing that. What you're going to need ingredient-wise is you're going to need 2 cups of heavy cream. You're going to need 5 egg yolks, or 4 if they're super large. My yolks were a little bit smaller, so I did 5. You're going to need 1/2 and 1/8 cup of sugar, and then you're going to need vanilla bean. Now this is a recipe that yields about 2 8-ounce ramekins worth of dessert. So the thing about vanilla bean is because it's very expensive, you don't want to go crazy on it, and a little goes a long way with this recipe. The seeds are very, very, very tiny. So what I've done is I've basically gotten a small segment of the vanilla bean, okay? And you're going to essentially split it, and then I'll show you kind of how to do that later. So first things first, you're going to take your cream, you're going to pour it into your pot, your saucepan. Okay. Then you're going to take your vanilla bean, and you're going to split it in half, okay? Then you're going to take the dull end of the blade. You're going to essentially scrape. See all that? It looks like paste, but it's tiny, almost like microscopic seeds, okay? So you're going to take the entire pod as well. Okay. You're going to mix it into the cream. Because the pod has flavor too, so you don't, we as chefs don't like wasting anything, and the vanilla pods carry a lot of flavor as well. So you don't want to waste any of that, okay? Straight. Smear that in. Okay, next, you're going to put this on heat. Now, the thing that you want to pay attention to with the cream is you don't want to set it too high because you'll scald it, and that will affect not only the flavor of the creme brulee, but it's going to affect the consistency as well. So what I do is I set it to moderately low, medium, low temperature. Now what you're going to do is you're going to watch it occasionally. You don't want it to boil at all. Once again, that will affect the consistency of the overall product. So you are going to kind of just let it sit there for a little bit. Keep an eye on it. When it's on medium-low, you shouldn't have to worry too much. Meanwhile, while that is heating up, you are going to take your yolks, put them in a bowl, and then you're going to take your sugar. Now this is one of the tricky parts. A lot of people like to put the sugar on and then just kind of let it sit. The moment the sugar comes in contact with the yolks, you want to mix it, because otherwise what the sugar does to the yolks is kind of almost like curdles it, or like makes the yolks lumpy and cooks it in a sense, and that's going to affect, once again, the quality of the creme brulee. So as soon as it touches the yolks, you're just going to want to mix it in. Now this culinary term is called blanching. You're going to blanch the yolks and make sure you get all of the sugar mixed into the yolks. It's a little bit cream here, let's do it. It's getting there. Okay. Now, while this is sitting, I'm going to take the cream, just kind of like stir it a little bit. That'll kind of agitate the yolk or the vanilla beans. It'll bring out the seeds a little bit more. Just stir it. It's looking like it's getting pretty warm. My big tell usually is you'll start seeing a little bit of steam. And when you see the steam, that means the cream is definitely hot enough for the next step. It means just 23 more seconds. Because I'm watching it, I'm going to turn the heat on a little bit higher. When you're like this close to the cream, paying attention to it, you won't have to worry too much. You just constantly stir it. You should be good to go. Alright. I think it's ready. Alright, I can smell the melody. It's steaming. Alright. Perfect. Now this is the second tricky step. What we're going to do now is we're going to temper the yolks. What that means is you're basically getting the yolks to the temperature of the hot cream without allowing the yolks to cook. So in order for that to happen, you have to be very careful and very quick. But don't be afraid. Don't be scared. Alright. So, my trick is getting a wet towel putting the bowl on top so that when you whisk, the bowl doesn't move around. Okay, so this is the part that you want to be careful of. Don't put it all in. Gradually put the cream in. Okay? If you put it all in, it's going to cook the yolks, and you don't want that. So you're essentially shocking these yolks with the heat of the cream. But because you're constantly stirring it, the egg yolks are curdling. And if your bowl isn't large enough to do all of the cream at this point, because you've done the majority of the cream into the yolks, you don't have to worry. You can just pour straight back in. The last bit here. Now, the final tricky step. You're going to put this back on the heat. The moment you put this back on the heat, you got to keep an eye on this. There might be something distracting, something like a football game, maybe your friends coming over and hanging out. But the moment you put this back on the heat, you got to keep an eye on it. You got to watch this very carefully. And you're going to stir it constantly, okay? So we're going to bring this back up. Once again, about medium. You don't want it too hot because, once again, it's going to actually cook the yolks. It's going to get super lumpy and you don't want that. So, you're just constantly stirring. Now, don't forget the edges of the saucepan. And just stir. Now, what is going to happen is gradually the yolk cream mixture is going to thicken. At a certain temperature, egg yolks start to cook and coagulate. That's the word I'm looking for, coagulate. Egg yolks will coagulate. And what you're going to do with that is, while you're doing this, you're getting it just to the coagulation phase or state without cooking it all the way. Some recipes are like as soon as you're done, like mixing everything up and tempering the yolks, you're good to put them in your ramekins and then bake them. I've noticed that there's something a little bit off with those recipes. The way I was always taught was to cook it to the anglaise stage. So what you're making is basically a creme anglaise, which is actually, oddly enough, the base for ice cream. You just keep stirring this, keep an eye on it, and as you can see, the mixture, if you can tell, the mixture is starting to thicken just a little bit, okay? It's getting there. This takes a lot of time and just a lot of attention. Actually, not that much time, just more attention, I would say. Constantly stir. Don't stop. If you stop, then what happens is the mixture at the bottom will end up thickening to a point where it gets lumpy. You don't want that. So, if you constantly stir, everything will look nice. And then, my test always is, they call it in French, à la nappage. Nappage. Basically, what that means is if it coats the spatula and you're able to run your finger across and the liquid doesn't run down, See how it kind of stays that way? That means it's pretty much done. I like doing a little bit thicker. So I'm just going to be very careful doing this. Perfect. This is what I want. All right. Last bit. Because you still have the vanilla pod in the bowl, you're going to want to strain it out. So, let's see if I can do this. Get a fine mesh strainer. There are cheap ones you can get at virtually any place like Vaughn's or Smart and Final. You're just going to strain these out. Now, what I like to do is I also like to use my spatula to press, get every little bit out. There's extra flavor in there. You don't want to miss. There's a little bit left in the pan. And now you have your base ready to be put into your ramekins, okay? Next step you're going to do is get your ramekins. Like I said, 8-ounce ramekins. This will fill it up about 2.5 maybe. So then you're going to get kind of like a baking sheet like this, where it's pretty deep. And the reason why you want it deep and not a shallow dish is because you're going to put your ramekins in a water bath. So you place your ramekins in your deep dish, and you pour the water in halfway, where it meets the ramekins about halfway, and you're putting it in a water bath. And then you put it directly into the oven at 300 degrees, and you let it bake for roughly about 45 to 50 minutes, depending on the heat of your oven, how powerful your oven is. I like to constantly check it like every 25 to 30 minutes. And usually by the hour mark, it's done. What you're looking for is you want the creme brulee to jiggle, but you want the edges to be set, like uniformly jiggling, okay? If it's jiggly in the center, almost like it's runny, it needs a little bit more time. So you're going to leave it in the oven. But as soon as you're able to jiggle it and the whole thing moves, but it's set, that's when you know that it's finished. So I've already finished some creme brulee. Let me grab that real quick. And this is going to be your final product. So once it's done in the oven and it's jiggly, you're going to put it in the fridge overnight. What it's going to do is it's going to set the custard. And it might not look super jiggly. You can kind of see it jiggle a little bit. But because it sets in the fridge, everything gets kind of like put together. That's why it's called setting it. And then you have your custard. All right, so next step, my personal favorite step, is torching it. So not everyone has access to a torch. I was able to get mine at a place called Chef City on Claremont Mesa Boulevard. It's basically like an IKEA for chefs, and it's completely open to the public. You'll find a lot of things there, including this. This was about $45, $50. And then they also have 4 packs of canisters. So if you don't want to use a torch, some people are a little freaked out by the idea of using a torch. You can essentially put a thin layer of baker's sugar which you can get at any store as well. I get mine at Smart and Final. It's basically super fine granules of sugar. The reason why you want that is because it's going to make a more uniformly pleasant and nice thin crust, sugar crust. So I have maker sugar. If you don't want to use a torch, you just put a thin layer on and you put it under the broiler until the caramel or the sugar caramelizes to the desired consistency that you want. My only thing is, if you're going to do the broiler style creme brulee, the end result is going to look a little bit different. I've tried it myself. It's just not quite the same. Every professional who makes creme brulee uses a torch. I understand if you don't want to use it. So broiler is totally fine for home cooking. You're still going to show off your skills to some people, but I like using a torch. So what you're going to do is you're going to get the edges, make sure edges of the ramekin get finely coated, like so. And then I'll just sprinkle some on top like this. You can move it around a little bit, tap it. Okay, and then you've got your sugar ready to torch. This is the fun part. Alright. And then you're just going to want to caramelize the sugar like so. And then you're just going to let it kind of cool down. It's super bubbly, it looks a little bit liquidy, but that's just because you basically made a caramel on the custard. The moment you let it cool down, let it sit for maybe about 1 minute to 2 minutes tops. What's going to happen is that liquidy caramel is going to harden, and that's going to form the crust that you want. I wish I had brought a spoon. It's not going to be this thing. Alright. Clean this knife off real quick. By the time I get back, it should be nice and hard. Alright. You probably won't be able to hear this, but that is the sound of perfectly torched sugar crust for your creme brulee. And there you have it. Enjoy.
Amazing. That's so fun to watch. I also really loved watching the torching part. I thought that took a lot longer, but it torched so quickly.
It torches very, very quickly. Very quickly. Yeah. I know people get a little scared by it, but honestly, as long as you just use it properly, it's nothing to be afraid of. And trust me, if you're putting it under the broiler, it's going to take quite a bit more time. When the custard is set and ready to torch, at that point for me, I don't have the patience to put it under the broiler. Some people do. I commend you for that, but for me, I just want it quick, so I use the torch. But yeah.
Awesome. That's awesome. We did have a couple questions come in as the video was playing. The first one I can kind of help answer. Somebody asked where the kitchen was that you were using. We had the opportunity to partner with Sodexo, so they were able to get us in on campus. But Matt, I was wondering if you were able to share a little bit about, I know you said before you were looking for a commercial kitchen for your business. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. So, at a certain point when it's time for me to expand, which is pretty soon here, I already have to up my pars on making the desserts every week. I want to also partner with restaurants and companies locally here in San Diego. I want to eventually be able to put myself in farmers markets, and I want to be able to, sell my desserts at swap meets. And in order for that to happen, I need my desserts, since they are technically perishable desserts, I need them to be in a commercial kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of my next big step. I was very lucky to have the opportunity to do the demonstration at Sodexo.
Mm-hmm.
It is technically a commercial kitchen. They have their own health permit and everything. The one funny thing that I didn't realize as I was taking it was like a farmer's market 101 class, is that churches also have commercial kitchens that oftentimes don't even really get used throughout the week. So if you're another person who has a business that requires a commercial kitchen, I would strongly recommend you looking into your local churches and seeing
Mm-hmm.
if they have kitchens. And usually you're able to strike a deal with them and make your business happen.
Awesome. A couple questions on the recipe. Somebody screen froze. So we are recording this, so we'll be able to post it on our website later so that you can rewatch. But I don't know, Matt, do you have a written recipe that maybe those who attended today, we can sneak their way?
I can jot one down and send it to you all. I also know that you have the video on YouTube, so you can get the link and watch the video on YouTube as well again. But yes, I can totally jot down a recipe real quick for you guys. Not a problem.
I'm more than happy to send that out to everybody who attended today too. But yes, we do have this on YouTube, and wow, somebody did it for us. Thank you, Michelle. She took some notes as you were going. That's awesome. So maybe you don't have to do that for us, Matt. Couple
happy to
other
help in any way.
They're awesome. Thanks. I will actually just copy that, Michelle. That's awesome. I should have done that myself. But I can send that to everybody. So somebody else asked how long in the fridge. Leanne helped, and I think you did say overnight. Is that right?
Overnight. So bare minimum 8 hours in the fridge. That's why I say overnight, because a lot of the time I make stuff towards the middle or the end of the day. And so it's just not going to be ready fully and completely until at least bare minimum 8 hours are done in the fridge. What it does also in the fridge is not only does it set the custard, but it also allows for the flavors to kind of marry a little bit more. It's just I found that it's better.
Cool. Where is your Brûlée Bar? Steven Christensen asked that.
Yeah. So right now, I operate at home, and I do deliveries as well as a pickup location. If you don't want to pay a delivering fee, I have a pickup location in North Park. So that's, as long as you kind of send us a DM on our Insta or Facebook, kind of like what you want to order for the week, and then you let us know if you want it delivered or picked up. We'll make that happen for you.
Awesome. So I think that answered your question too, Rihanna, for ordering it. If you go onto the Instagram, right, send a DM through you that way, Matt?
Yes. So follow us on Instagram or Facebook at the Brûlée Bar. And we post a menu every week on Sundays. We change our menu weekly. So that's how we do it. We always have 4 flavors, and we rotate out those 4 flavors. We usually have one returning flavor that's very popular. And then we always have a vegan option as well.
Awesome. I'm going to kind of go out of order with these questions because some of them are relating to each other. So how do you come up with your flavor combinations? What each week when you come out with your new flavors?
Yeah, that's fun. I honestly, I kind of have a creative time throughout the week where I just kind of sit down, jot some things down. I've been in the industry for quite some time, and even before then, you know, I have always loved experimenting. But in terms of, you know, how I come up with flavors, it might depend on the flavor. Honestly, sometimes I get inspiration from other recipes and cookbooks, or watching something on Netflix.
Nice.
I definitely watch a lot of cooking shows. I get inspiration all the time. I also know that certain things just go well together. You know, dark chocolate and rosemary. I've done dark chocolate and rosemary before in previous kitchens. You know, brown butter, cinnamon. There's brown butter, cinnamon things out there. You know, it's a flavor pairing that I have not come up with myself. It's something that has been out there before. So, and then there's weird ones too, like wasabi white chocolate. You know, I thought of that, you know, I was like, I want to do something with white chocolate, but I kind of want to add a different, unique kind of flavor that would also kind of enhance the white chocolate, but bring out something else as well. And from there, it's just kind of like researching. I do a lot of researching as well. And, you know, I come up with a lot of flavors just by researching as well. I'll mess around in the kitchen. I'll come up with something. I'm like, I like this, but maybe it could use this. Like, for instance, not the Thai chili, the Thai tea and clove. The first time I made that, I was pretty happy with how it turned out, but I felt like it lacked something. And all it needed was a little bit of orange peel in the infusion process. And what the orange peel did was it accentuated the clove while also bringing out the Thai tea notes as well. So it's, you know, trial and error, experimenting a bit, researching, getting inspiration. Kind of depends on the flavor, but I mess around a lot.
So when you do have these flavors and you want to infuse it with, Mark's question is when you want to infuse the cream with maybe passion fruit or any of these flavors that you're talking about, how do you go about doing that? Like, what are some tips?
So I don't want to give away too much of my secrets, but honestly, it kind of depends on each thing. Like, certain things I know aren't going to infuse well unless you steep it for a long period of time. Like for the Thai tea, I ended up kind of using a filter, almost like a cold brew filter sort of thing, where I heated up the cream and then I poured it into the cold brew filled, instead of with coffee, it was filled with Thai tea, and kind of let it sit for a while in a warm area, so that for one thing, the cream is thick. So if it's cold, it's saturated and it's not very runny. So in order for flavors to infuse, you need to apply heat. So when you apply heat to cream, it becomes a little bit more liquidy. It becomes more runny, not as viscous, and that is a good way to infuse. It just kind of depends on, you know, a flavor that you're messing around with. If you want to try doing something yourself, feel free to message me or hit me up. I can kind of give you my 2 cents about it. Once again, that just comes with trial and error for me, figuring out what works and what doesn't work. I had a flavor that took the longest time to kind of perfect, and it is just sometimes the technique on how you infuse or when you incorporate it. Sometimes I'll incorporate things into the egg yolks before tempering the yolks with the hot cream. It just kind of depends.
Awesome. So any upcoming flavors that you are excited about? Also, what are your top 3 sellers?
I would say my top 3 sellers as of right now have been the brown butter cinnamon for sure. That's probably my number 1 seller. I would say another big seller, honestly, and this isn't just one specific flavor, but I've been doing really well with the cereal flavors. I found out last week I did an all cereal week essentially. And that was probably my highest selling week. So cereal flavors have been really popular. I've done Fruity Pebbles, I've done Captain Crunch, I've done Corn Pops. I've done all sorts of fun, nostalgic cereals. And then lastly, I would say my highest selling vegan creme brulee would probably be the coconut mint.
Ooh,
Probably the coconut mint, yeah.
that's awesome. We have one more question about the recipe specifically, and then I have one other question for you. So this one is, can we use liquid vanilla instead of the bean? If so, how much?
Yeah, you can totally use vanilla extract if you like. It's going to change the color of the creme brulee. You're also not going to get the exact flavor as you would the vanilla bean. I understand vanilla bean is expensive. That's why I said in the video, you know, a little goes a long way. You can only use like a little segment of it, and that will kind of stretch out your use of the vanilla bean. But yeah, you can totally use vanilla extract if you want to use vanilla extract with that specific recipe, because it yields about 2 8-ounce ramekins. I would say you would probably use maybe a teaspoon at the most. A little bit it depends on the vanilla extract too. Some extracts are pretty potent and some are kind of cheap. If you go to Smart and Final, you can get kind of like a vanilla, not necessarily a vanilla extract, but it's like a vanilla flavor kind of extract, like fake extract. And if your vanilla extract isn't super potent, then I would say you would probably double it. But totally, yeah, if you want to save money and you're just trying to get a vanilla flavor for yourself and you're not worried about impressing your friends or anything, you can totally use vanilla extract, no problem.
Awesome. Do you ever marble a dark chocolate into the cream, leaving 2 flavors distinct?
Fun. I actually did. I did a couple of flavors in the past. I did a vegan one, which was a mango sticky rice. So I made 2 bases. I made a sticky rice base and I made a mango base. And then I basically swirled the 2 together and made the mango sticky rice. It was great. I also did a chamango flavor. Same idea, kind of chamoy and then a mango base, and kind of swirled those in as well. Those are the 2 main ones I've done, but I'm totally experimenting and thinking up more flavors as we come. So I'm sure I'll probably do some more flavors similar to that, where you kind of get 2 different bases and swirl them together. I think that also just kind of makes what I have stand out a little bit more too.
Yeah. I'm going to go back up a little bit to a question that was asked a while ago. What inspired you to pursue food as a career?
Oh man, there are a lot of inspirations. I would say one big inspiration was just growing up and my mom always letting me help her in the kitchen. I always had a lot of fun cooking in the kitchen with my mom. We would always watch cooking shows together, and I was always really fascinated by that, especially like Alton Brown. I loved Alton Brown growing up. I loved Emeril Lagasse and his passion and his fun presence on the stage and on camera. I would say my mom definitely had a huge impact on, you know, following food. But then I also just grew up, and I had always enjoyed eating out. I had always enjoyed the experience of food. There are friends that I had growing up that would always tell me, you know, eating is such a pain. It's always like you have to take so much time, like sitting down and eating and, you know, digesting the food and this and that and this and that. But for me, food was always more than just, you know, nourishment. Food meant a lot more to me than just, you know, health and, you know, feeding your hunger, you know, satisfying your hunger. For me, food was, you know, about the experience. Food was, you know, God gave us taste buds for a reason. I always believed in. So for me, I just was fascinated about the, I don't know, the aesthetic or the nostalgic feel that food had, you know, where you taste something and it brings to mind a memory or, you know, something to your mind that, you know, other senses don't always give you. You know, smell and taste have this effect on people that allow them to bring memories back to them. So I had always thought that food, you know, had a pleasurable aspect as well as a comforting aspect as well. So, yeah.
Totally agree. That's awesome. Will the Brûlée Bar be making any other desserts in the future other than creme brulee?
Yeah, so I knew going into this concept that I wanted to do more than just creme brulee. That's why I called it the Brûlée Bar, not the Crème Brûlée Bar. Brûlée in French means burnt. So without going too far into it, because I have a lot of concepts that go along with the brulee concept, a whole lot of ideas that I definitely will be bringing to the table at some point. But yeah, I totally want to make other things. I think the next thing for me might be a pastry that I'll fill with custard. So we'll see where we go with that. But I definitely have a lot of ideas that I would like to incorporate the brulee concept to. There's a lot you can do with it. A lot of burnt things. That's why one of our main hashtags we like to post about is burnt never tasted so good. It's a thing that a lot of chefs actually mess around with charring and burning things intentionally so that it brings out other flavors. And for me, I was always tickled by that idea. I was like, I wonder if I could do something along those lines. So, yeah.
I love that. Well, we are ready for whatever other desserts come our way. I know that for sure. And I know there's some people who are not like from San Diego here, so I think they're ready for you to come their way too. Mark says he wants you to come to Boise, so
I am always down to travel at the expense of business. So
yeah, there you go.
That is something I am totally willing to do.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Matt. This was really fun. Really loved having you join us today. I know that we all learned a lot. We'll make sure to, I'll cross-check Michelle's recipe with Matt and see if we can get that sent out. Thanks, Michelle. And yeah, so we're just so thankful for you today. Everybody who's here, thank you for joining us. We do have 2 more weeks of Loma Talks for our summer series, so do hope that you'll join us for those. Next week we're meeting, we're having a talk on media consumption with Danielle Cervantes and Abby Hamblin. I think that will be really eye-opening, especially in this time. And then we do have one other one at the beginning of August, Union Church in Arizona and their Union Coffee Company. It's 2 alums in Arizona who, Brian Fry and John Runyon, who—
John Runyon!
Yeah, he'll be here in a couple weeks, and he's gonna, they're gonna tell us about their community there and their church, and then also talk through some coffee tips and tricks. We always love food and coffee and all that. So hope you will all join us. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Matt. That was amazing. Can't wait to try some of your creme brulee. I know that we'll be making an order soon. So, all right. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us today.